Love of a Lady. I'm about to tell you an altogether true story. It happened across the ocean in France when our two boys, Danny and Ricky, were young. Let's begin in a town called St. Cloud, or St. Cloud, as they say in Minnesota. We lived in a quirky little apartment that had a beguiling view on the top floor of what had once been a grand old house. It was built probably when your great-great-great-grandparents were still very small, by a general for his family of 12 children, which no doubt explains the very little rooms, which nevertheless had enormous windows. From the high double windows in the all-purpose living, playroom, extra bedroom for visitors, dining room, with its round table covered with a sea blue cloth, we could make out the Eiffel Tower in the distance, poking up like a giant tinker toy, even fireworks from the tower. We'd climb up to the roof to watch the French celebration on their 14th of July. That's what we saw across the river and through the woods in Paris. Our friend and neighbor Kitty, the true heroine of this story, lived down a cobblestone street nearby with her two children, Bryce and John. They were just about the same age you are, or used to be. They're not inside this story. They're just outside waiting for it to happen, and they don't even have a clue. Not long after yesterday, we celebrated the last night of Hanukkah with games, lots of potato pancakes, cider, and singing. The twin windows reflected the peaceful glow of 9 flickering candles in this special holder. The next morning only began gray and glum. Kitty asked me to be at her place sometime in the afternoon to keep her company on a very important errand. I couldn't wait, but of course did. Wouldn't have missed this for all the chai in China. We left Kitty's snug house, squeezed into her little blue car, and were on our way. We drove through the bumpy back roads of deserted streets lined and linked with endless sloping rooftops of brick factory chimneys and high walls. The sky looked like it had been smeared with an oily rag, but we didn't mind the dank and gloom much, because when the streetlights went on, it made the dull streets look quite cozy. But I'm not here to talk about the weather, am I? Besides, we're bundled up to our ears against the cold. Kitty soon memorized the address she'd scribbled on a scrap of paper, but still found it a bit hard to find in the coming darkness. After about 27.5 minutes of driving, at least half of them circling the block like a lost puppy, we could just about make out some large letters cut into a stone above a door that told us we had found the right place. The big building sat squat as a rock. How could we have missed it? Perhaps because it was almost as plain and gray as the day? No matter. We were tremendously pleased to get there before closing time. Kitty quickly found a spot in the nearly empty parking lot, and we ran up a short flight of stone steps. We pushed one shiny king-sized handle fixed to giant double glass doors and found ourselves inside a great hall. Except for a row of plain wooden chairs at one end and a sort of very high desk in the middle, it was empty and vast. Sort of like a big cave with a little furniture, I thought. And almost immediately, because she couldn't do it any sooner, a small, stout lady in a crisp white coat bustled over to us. "Oui, mesdames? Yes, ladies? she said, sounding like a roller coaster climbing to the top, and black eyebrows raised so high that they looked like they'd tumble off. This particular way of asking questions sometimes happens quite naturally in France. Suivez-moi, follow me, demanded the little round lady when Kitty told her why we had come. We are soon closed, and you must scurry, vite, vite. As much as a tune loves a whistle, Kitty and I loved to laugh. Relax, my friend giggled in a whisper when we found that one long stride of ours easily matched 3 of Madame's. Oh my, were we surprised at the hush in the high room with super clean cage after cage of dogs, in all sizes, at least half a mile of them. There were shaggy dogs and smooth ones, curly and long-haired ones, young and grown-up ones, some as low as toadstools, others high as tables, all with matching tails natch. But why was there hardly a peep or scratch? We put our heads together and decided, on the one hand, it could be that the dogs were fed and glad, or on the other, lonely and sad, or never mind, handsome is as handsome does, and they did look loved and cared for, though longing for more. Kitty wandered from dog to dog, trying them out for size with her big brown eyes. But she kept returning to one cage in particular, tilting her head this way and that. Finally, pointing to a dog with its moist muzzle sticking through the bars of the big cage, she called out with excitement, "Oh, I love this little lady already." The almost puppy was not too big, not too small, lively, not unruly, not curly, not bald, with a fine head and glossy coat, the color of smooth butterscotch or maple syrup. Take your pick. She looked like a small and elegant doe if a dog were one. Her gentle eyes seemed to say, "Please take me home. They feed me well here, but I don't belong." Lady, which is what Kitty quickly named this lovely as if no other would suit her, was soon pattering after Madame Roly-Poly. That's the name we quietly gave Madame. It seemed to fit her fine, too. We were as gleeful as fleas on a dog, though this one was clean as a whistle. As we followed closely behind their tails, or rather ladies, to be exactly polite, Madame Roly-Poly kept up a steady chatter that sounded like rain on a goldfish pond. "You must cook vegetable and rice for petit chouchou, the doggy. Take she for a fine walk every time, play with and run, brush the coat, wipe her paw wet, shampooing his hair, give her big bone from the butcher. Chicken, no, they are dangerous for the pet, et d'ailleurs, beside, if no, you will not carry chouchou to home chez vous." Oh my, I thought to myself, how lucky are the dogs are, at this French animal shelter, to be loved and cared for as well as anybody's children. We soon reached the high desk in the lobby and waited on a short line behind a few more people filling out adoption papers and happy to have found a pet. Lady wanted to play but wagged her tail instead. Stroking her head and close to her ear, Kitty murmured, "How happy the boys will be to welcome you in time for Christmas." For the boys in time for Christmas? Just hold on tight. See the young man who just raced up the steps, looking anxiously through one glass door, then the other. He's trying the handles again and again, and knocking on the thick glass doors. Madame Roly-Poly had just locked the doors and pocketed the big key with a satisfied look, as if to say, "My pet, she are safe with me this night." "Madame," I dared to ask, "please, won't you see what Monsieur wants?" A bit annoyed, and not without an answer, she chats her way back and opens the door a crack. The slim young man slips his way into the hall. He's out of breath and his cheeks are flushed red. He's wearing a faded blue work jacket, blue overalls, and a wool cap, and anxiously looking all about as if he had lost a precious treasure. Madame Roly-Poly, lips tight as a purse, folds her arms across her chest and looks extremely huffed. After a short exchange of words with her, the young man looks sadder than sad. He stuffs his cap absent-mindedly into his jacket pocket and shuffles slowly over to the row of chairs. He slumps heavily into a seat and props his arms on his knees, holding his bowed head in his hands. Whatever can be the matter? Before you see what happens next, believe me, it is all as true as the moon and the sun. Suddenly, Lady's head perks up, her silky little ears straight up in the air, tail waving like a flag, and she trots over to the young man with a purpose. In the twinkling of an eye, and as sure as your name, Lady lays her lovely head across the young man's lap, one light brown eye looking up at him, appealing. Without raising his eyes, the young man slowly cradles Lady's head like a prayer. Lady lingers as long as it takes for one hard swallow. When the young man finally looks up, the smile on his wet face could make stone melt. Lady nuzzles the young man as if urging him to tell her story. Kitty catches my eye with a significant wink, and we practically fly over to the young man and sit down beside him, quietly. He wipes his tired-looking eyes across his sleeve, and we lean over to catch his words that soon come tumbling out. This is what he says. His wife suddenly became very sick about 3 weeks ago. He called for an ambulance and asked them to please hurry. The kind ambulance driver lets him sit beside his wife's cot and hold her hand as they race through the street, sirens blaring. What a lot of commotion at the busy hospital. But until his wife is comfortably settled, he won't leave her, though no one could tell him how long she would need to stay. 3 days? 3 weeks? He works long hours in the Renault car factory, sometimes the evening shift as well, and during the day there'd be no one at home to care for the young dog that they'd had for only a few months. And so the next Saturday he brought her back to the animal shelter. Though it hurt his heart so, at least she would be well cared for. What else was he to do? As the young man spoke, Madame chimed in, flipping the air as if brushing away his words. "No, monsieur, no. It is not possible for you to take to homme once more le petit chien, the young dog. What would you have done in Kitty's place? Okay. Kitty laid her hand on the young man's arm and said to him, using all the French she knew and just a little bit more, "You're a fine young man, and you did what you had to. Who wouldn't have done the same? We can see that lady belongs to no one but you." Madame's glance fell on Kitty. Her eyebrows rose as swiftly as twin blackbirds, but soon settled down again. She shrugged her shoulders and said with a lilt and the slightest of smiles, "Eh bien, oh well, so it must be." Kitty and I were soon back in the little blue car, pulling out of the deserted parking lot. It was dark as the deep, but with the headlights on, we could see in the car ahead a dog that looked exactly like Lady. Her velvety muzzle was nodding up and down, licking the laughing cheek of a young woman whose arms held her close. At the wheel of the car, with his arm around them both, was the young man who had made it to the animal shelter just in the nick of time, as if, do we know what makes stars sparkle? How bright the night suddenly seemed. Kitty flashed her headlights in greeting. The young man and his wife waved. Au revoir, goodbye, and with Lady snuggled between them, slowly disappeared down the road towards home. Are you beginning to think, but Kitty's boys, what about them? I'm glad you didn't forget them. It happened that the boys had two gifts that Christmas. A brand new fluffy white puppy, bought at the last minute from a lady who raised them, and their mom's story, which I don't doubt they are telling their children today. La fin, the end.